answer.
The question is, what is your response to the phenomenon?
Of the aliens? You mean?
Whatever it may be.
UAPs or UFOs, whatever. I was skeptical for a long time, partly because there's a cloud of crazies around this subject areas that, make QAnon look like the soul of rigor, okay? So for whatever reason, there seems to be a topic that attracts a lot of people who are not well mentally. But I think that has confused the issue unnecessarily, because I think the reality is that there is not merely eyewitness testimony, there is apparently hundreds of visual recordings on film or videotape or whatever that document these things. And I think that what we need to do is to stop the government censorship of these things and to allow everybody to see them and to make their own minds up about what's going on. And I think personally, my conversion is that I began to see that certain of the evidence simply, and the testimony of the people involved, that attempting to refute them was essentially attempting to overthrow expert witnesses when they witness something. And that is not something you want to do. These people have a level of expertise that means that what they say carries a definite weight with it, okay?
And people who are qualified to fly multi-million-dollar weapons platforms
in addition
over
to which the general
U.S. cities
amount of
to do
training
war for the United States
that fighter pilots and commercial airliner pilots go through is extraordinary by ordinary standards, okay? This is easily as difficult as any legal profession or anything, okay?
And these people are trained to recognize what they see.
These are experts in a truly complex field where lack of expertise gets you killed, okay? These guys, these people are experts, and when they say they saw something, it cannot be dismissed out of hand, okay? To do so is fraud, all right? I think that the government has felt that they didn't understand this, and this is my guess, they didn't understand what was going on. They don't like having headlines about things they don't understand and can't deal with, so they arranged to just have all the expert witnessing of this thing be suppressed so that they weren't allowed to speak about it, but
and were ridiculed if they did.
Well, mocked ruthlessly.
Had their credibility destroyed,
right.
etc.
And in addition to which, that they could end up in jail if they did. Okay, so
if they had security clearances.
Yeah,
right.
and I mean
lose their flight status,
right.
etc.
Well, you'll never fly again, kind of thing. Okay,
right.
To a career pilot, that's a death threat, effectively, the death of your career. Okay, so I mean, I think they've been heavy-handed, and they did this apparently in our best interest without having any idea what they were doing.
Okay. What about the otherness of the features of the technology or whatever it is that we're seeing?
Rather than get caught up in the otherness of
right,
it,
sure.
what I think is, to what extent do these things measurably do things that we're not currently capable of doing with any technology we know or that we know anyone else has? And I think if you use that measure, you quickly come to the conclusion that there are some things like these things undergoing hundreds of G's of acceleration. Okay, if we don't have absolute to-the-foot measurements of where they are, we can nevertheless deduce from the time it takes to capture film, the time between each film clip, exactly how much distance is covered in a given amount of time. You could give a ballpark estimate, and if you're talking about 800 Gs, which they are talking about, then a ballpark estimate is more than adequate, okay?
Right.
Because even if you're off by hundreds of Gs, we still don't have anything or anyone that can survive a 500 G acceleration. In other words, one that they weigh 500 times what they currently weigh, and they manage to survive the flight.
And clearly, even the materials that we possess terrestrially, even the materials themselves would not survive this any more than a tank would survive being dropped out of a plane. Well, it's the same effect. Right?
And I know someone who did that for fun, dropped a tank out of a plane, and well, it was actually only a half track, but he described to me how amazingly planar the resulting thing was, that all the interior spaces in this artifact had ceased to exist.
So what about the academics who are currently blocking you participating in this in any kind of productive way? Neil deGrasse Tyson has laughed about it, has made fun of it over and over again. And other names, major names.
Well,
and I don't want
it's
to
not always the
the
case, but you always have to consider whether what you're saying would in any way endanger their funding, because then they will go to holy war against you regardless of the truth of what you're saying.
Right.
And the more true it is, the more they'll fight, okay? So, I mean, first of all, we would have to analyze to see whether this was simply academic politics writ large.
As usual. Right.
As usual, okay?
The orthodoxy projecting itself.
Well, exactly, okay? And what I do think we need to do is what everybody agrees it would be reasonable to do. Turn precise scientific instruments loose to document these events, to see what the hell they are. Okay?
How are you affected by this phenomenon, the fact that this phenomenon has turned out to be something viable?
That's actually quite an interesting
You, as somebody who grew up with Buck Rogers
No.
and Flash Gordon, how has this affected you? It's like Flash Gordon coming true. I mean, science fiction is an important genre, you know?
Fermi's conjecture isn't just a cocktail party thing. It's something serious. If there are so many civilizations in the world, where the hell are they? Well, are we ignoring the obvious? I mean, there's no evidence necessarily that this is what they are, but we certainly can't ignore the possibility that would be very unscientific.